After our family was robbed in our home, we hid in the wardrobe waiting for the police. The adopted daughter my parents brought back from the orphanage suddenly coughed, and they were terrified, hastily pushing me out. "Dad, Mom," I cried out in fear, but Mom was furious and scolded me. "What are you crying for? If the bad guys come back, we'll all die." I stared blankly at Jessica, who was hiding in her mother's arms. Her crying having stopped, Dad tried to soothe me with some guilt in his voice. "Karina, those uncles are our friends, go play with them for a while, and we'll take you with us later, Uncle James." But those people brought knives. Jessica's unspoken words were silenced by a look from her father. That's when I realized that my parents had chosen her and abandoned me. But later, when the Godfather, whose mere gesture could shake both the underworld and the legitimate world, held me in his arms and gently comforted me, they cried and begged me to come home. The Godfather asked, "Do you want to go with them?" I shook my head. "I already have a new daddy, I don't want them anymore." I was suddenly shoved out of the wardrobe, the back of my head slammed hard against the floor, the pain making my vision go black and my ears ring. Outside the door, several tall men approached, strange patterns painted on their bodies, malicious smiles on their faces. I instinctively turned my head to look at the cabinet door left ajar. Meeting my mother's eyes full of terror, she tightly covered her adopted daughter Jessica's mouth, holding her close to her chest. Jessica trembled like a frightened rabbit, but when her eyes met mine, the corners of her mouth curved into an almost imperceptible smile. Before I could cry out for help, my father's muffled voice came from inside the cabinet, each word like a knife stabbing deeply into my heart. Big brother. Use her to settle the debt. Take her away, please. Don't hurt Jessica." My world seemed to freeze at that moment, then came crashing down. So this wasn't a burglary at all. I was just a commodity, priced and sold to settle a debt. A man stepped forward, roughly grabbed my hair, and yanked me up from the ground. A sharp, tearing pain spread across my scalp, but I didn't cry or shout. I just stared intently at the gap under the door, because I knew that no matter how much I cried or called out, my parents would never come to save me. I saw the man take out a bank card from his pocket and throw it into the cabinet, and at that moment, my father's face was filled with a fawning smile, nodding and bowing repeatedly. "It seems I was sold for a good price." Mom finally let go of her hand covering Jessica's and instead gently stroked her back, murmuring something, as if trying to soothe her frightened heart. From beginning to end, not a single person looked at me again. I was discarded by them without hesitation. The man grabbed my hair and dragged me out like a worn-out sack. My back scraped against the rough ground, burning hot, but I couldn't feel any pain. The moment I was dragged out the door, the hallway light illuminated the face at the door crack. Jessica was looking at me through that gap, her eyes no longer showing feigned terror, but instead, undisguised smugness. It clattered to the ground with a loud clang. I was thrown into a dilapidated van, and the thick smell of smoke and sweat instantly enveloped me, making me feel nauseous. I didn't cry. My tears had already dried up the moment I was pushed out of the wardrobe. I leaned against the cold van wall, repeatedly recalling my father's words, "Use her to settle the debt," my mother's fearful yet cold gaze, and Jessica's victorious smile. It turns out that family bonds can also be priced and sold. I don't know how much time had passed when I was pushed into the basement. One of the leading men with a scarred face took out his phone and dialed a number. His slightly fawning tone was exactly the same as my dear father's. "Bob, we've brought the person, don't worry, James's family are quite sensible people. They didn't make a fuss about it." I curled up in the corner, listening to every word without missing a single one. For the next 2 days, the basement door only opened when meals were delivered. I gradually became numb. I didn't think about my parents, nor about Jessica. I just stared at the mouse in the corner of the wall, as if looking at another version of myself. On the third day, the door opened. A fat man with a scarred face, respectfully called Bob, walked up to me, crouched down, and pinched my chin with his fingers, examining me back and forth like livestock. His eyes were filled with undisguised disgust. "You're too skinny, like a little chick." He let go of me and ordered the scar-faced man, "Fatten him up a bit. Feed him for a few days before sending him over. Don't let the adults over there think we can't even handle such a small matter. My destination is another place called adulthood." From that day on, I was forced to eat a lot of things, rice piled up like small mountains, along with greasy meals, and they watched me until I swallowed it all down. I vomited, but it only brought about more violent treatment. Later, I stopped vomiting and just ate mechanically. Then returned to curl up in the corner after finishing. A week later, I was taken out of the basement. The scar-faced man changed me into a clean dress, a beautiful style I had never worn before. The flesh on his face squeezed into a smile as he said he would take me to a good place. The car stopped in front of a magnificent villa, gorgeous like a palace from a fairy tale. I was brought into a pure white room, with white walls, white floor tiles, and two beds covered with white sheets in the center of the room. Those weren't beds, they were operating tables. Several people wearing white coats walked in, their eyes looking at me like I was an object, cold without a trace of warmth. One of them held a document and said to another person, "No anesthesia allowed. We need to keep the organs active." My brain buzzed, and everything became clear in an instant. They had fattened me up not to sell me for a good price, but to make the parts inside my body fresher and more valuable. A nurse walked over, holding a thick syringe, and wiped my arm with an alcohol swab, sending chills down my spine. I didn't struggle, just watched her quietly, because I knew no one here would listen to my cries. Just like at home, I've known since childhood that my parents don't like me, simply because I'm not a boy. Money-losing goods. This is the phrase I've heard the most. I learned to live cautiously at home, not daring to breathe loudly, afraid that my existence would become the reason for their rage. Until Jessica was brought back from the orphanage, I naively thought that the two of us little girls could hold each other tight under this roof and keep warm together. But I was wrong. The love and attention I had always coveted, they gave generously and without reservation to Jessica. Buy her beautiful princess dresses, throw her grand birthday parties, and even when she coughs, her mother nervously holds her in her arms. It turns out they don't not know how to love someone, they just don't love me. The thick needle suddenly pierces my skin, and the liquid is injected into my body. It's not anesthesia, but a potion that makes the senses even clearer. Excruciating pain instantly swept through my entire body, as if it were about to tear me apart. I bit my lip hard, tasting a bitter sweetness, yet stubbornly refused to make a sound. My consciousness gradually blurred amidst the agony, and the world became vast and silent. Was I about to die, dying in such a cold place, and then becoming part of someone else's body? Just as I was about to completely lose consciousness, the room door was kicked open. After the loud bang, there were several dull thuds of people falling, followed by more screams. I struggled to open my eyes slightly, and through my blurred vision, a tall figure stood silhouetted against the light, like an Azura walking out of hell. He was dressed entirely in black, his face and hands covered in blood, walking toward me step by step, the air filled with a strong smell of blood. He bent down, pulled the needle from my arm, and then looked at me with cold eyes, lifting me from the operating table. His embrace was actually quite cold, but it was the embrace I had longed for, and I greedily wanted more. I leaned against his chest, looking up at his blood-stained yet exceptionally handsome face, and whispered softly, using my last bit of strength, "Are you, the black impermanence, come to claim my life?" He didn't answer my question, but instead spat out a mouthful of blood indifferently. "These damn beasts." He looked down at me, his blood-stained fingers were somewhat cold, but he still carefully avoided the needle mark on my arm. "Whose child are you?" I didn't answer, just buried my face in his suit, tears silently sliding down. This was the first time I cried for myself, not out of fear, but mourning for that sacrificed Jiang Wan, that innocent little girl who naively believed that being obedient and well-behaved could earn her parents' pity, had died at the closet door, died on this operating table. Now, what remains alive is merely a lonely soul desperately clinging to a lifeline, striving to survive. Almost involuntarily, I reached out my frail arm and tightly embraced the man's neck. With all my strength, I cried out in a broken, sobbing voice, "Dad." The man holding me clearly stiffened for a moment. The terrifying killing intent emanating from his entire body seemed to pause for a moment because of my bold address. I could feel his muscles tensing, as if he might throw out this ungrateful wretch at any moment. I could only gamble that he still had a shred of mercy for me, a child. After a long time, he did not push me away. A large hand fell on my back, patting gently with a hint of helplessness. The movements were awkward and stiff. Another pitiful one. His voice was deep, sounding in my ear. "But being my daughter, Frank's daughter, you can't go around crying." Frank, I remembered that name. I immediately stopped crying, but still buried my face in his chest, like a young beast that had found its nest. I understood what he meant. he can be my new dad, but on one condition. I must be obedient and not weak. Frank held me and turned to walk out of this white room. Outside the door, several people in white coats lay scattered about, blood pooling on the ground, the stench of blood in the air even stronger. I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt a sense of relief and pleasure. Frank stepped over them without so much as a glance, his leather shoes squelching in the blood. His subordinates followed behind, heads bowed respectfully, not daring to breathe heavily. I was carried into a black car. The car was warm. In stark contrast to his slightly cool embrace, a subordinate handed over a clean blanket, and Frank took it, wrapping me up tightly, leaving only my head exposed. Back to the estate, the car drove smoothly away, leaving that magnificent human hell behind. I leaned against Frank's chest, the side effects of the potion making me drowsy, but I forced myself to keep my eyes open. I'm afraid this is a dream, and when I wake up, I'll be back on that cold, sterile operating table. Frank seemed to sense my unease, his large hand never left my back, gently patting rhythmically. Sleep, he spoke softly, no one will dare to touch you again. His voice seemed to carry some kind of magic, finally allowing my tense nerves to relax as I fell into a deep sleep. I settled into Frank's mansion. Everything here felt like an unreal dream. The soft bed, clean clothes, and an endless supply of food. This is everything I never had. But I wake up at 4 o'clock every morning. Unable to fall back asleep, I remember my mother saying that our family doesn't keep idle people, and those who lose money must have the attitude of those who lose money. I can't become Mr. Frank's money loser, so I quietly slipped out of the room and, following my former life, picked up a cloth to wipe the handrails, polishing the vast living room floor until it could reflect one's image. Just as dawn was breaking, I ran into the kitchen again, wanting to prepare breakfast for Mr. Frank. But faced with those kitchen utensils I had never seen before, I could only clumsily imitate the servants, boiling a pot of hot water and brewing a cup of tea. When the butler discovered me, his face was full of difficulty. He looked at my dusty face and the rag I was clutching tightly in my hand, sighed, and finally turned to go report to Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank was sitting in the restaurant, leisurely having his breakfast. I stood aside like a child who had made a mistake and was waiting for judgment. Head down, hands twisting the hem of my clothes. Even my breathing was softened. He took a sip of the tea I had brewed, and his eyebrows frowned almost imperceptibly. The next second, he put down the teacup, reached out and grabbed the back of my collar, lifting me up to his face like a cat. His gaze was very serious, without any trace of joking. Being my daughter, you need to learn more than just how to serve people. I was stunned, staring at him blankly. I tilted my face up, meeting his probing gaze, and spoke clearly, word by word. I'm not afraid of any hardship, as long as you don't abandon me. He looked at the stubbornness in my eyes, remained silent for a long time, and finally let go of his hand. All right, then prove it to me. From that day on, my life was filled with various courses, no longer mopping floors and washing dishes, but etiquette, multiple languages, finance, combat, equestrianism. Mr. Frank hired the top teachers in each field for me and custom-designed a training program tailored to my needs. I was like a withered, nearly dried-out sponge, frantically absorbing all the knowledge that could make me stronger and qualify me to stay here. The etiquette teacher struck my curved spine with a ruler, telling me that standing straight was the first step to nobility. The martial arts coach threw me to the mat time and time again, telling me that only if my fists were hard enough would I not be at the mercy of others. I never cried out in pain, nor did I ever complain, because every physical pain I endured was nothing compared to the pain my parents brought upon me. As for the James family, my kind father and mother, they used the money from selling me and the debts that were forgiven to live the good life they had always dreamed of. This is the material that Mr. Frank's subordinate placed in front of me, with photos on it. Mom carried her designer bag that she used to always linger over in front of store windows, smiling with happiness all over her face. Dad also put on decent suits and reportedly became a junior manager at a company. And Jessica, wearing a beautiful dress, was held by them on both sides in the middle, like a real princess. They moved to a high-end residential complex, and whenever they met someone, they would tearfully recount that night of burglary, describing how they fought bravely against the criminals but still couldn't save their poor daughter. They cursed the robbers' cruelty and expressed their longing for me, earning everyone's sympathy and praise. Relatives and friends all praised them as devoted and righteous parents. saying that only Jessica, their adopted daughter, could comfort their grief over losing their biological daughter. Looking at the photo of their happy family of 3, my fingers slowly tightened, crumpling the photo out of shape. Mr. Frank had somehow appeared behind me, his deep voice sounding, "Do you hate them?" I let go of my hand, smoothed out the crumpled photograph, then raised my head, revealing a faint smile that didn't belong to someone of my age. I tore the photo into pieces and threw it into the trash bin, my tone as calm as if I were talking about something unrelated to myself. Trash should stay in the trash heap, shouldn't it? The evening I underwent rigorous training to meet Mr. Frank's requirements. Mr. Frank's assistant Sam, a refined man, handed me a brown paper bag. He bowed as usual, his tone calm. "Miss, the sir said you have the right to know about these things." The file was thick, and I flipped through it page by page. Despite years of experience, seeing these documents still stirred up memories from my past. It detailed how my dear father David embezzled public funds for gambling and eventually owed Bob $500,000 in gambling debts. Attached at the back were the transcripts of phone recordings and bank transfer records. Sam handed me a recording at the right moment. I steadied my nerves and pressed the play button. After the noisy background sounds, came my mother's voice, which I still remembered clearly after all these years. Her tone was pleading. "Jessica is in poor health. You can't touch her. Take the other one, she's tougher." Dad's voice quickly followed in agreement. Yeah, Karina has always been tough since she was little." The crackling static from the headphones brought me back to reality. The last bit of ridiculous warmth in my world also completely disappeared after that sentence. I took off my headphones, raised my head, and quietly looked at the huge floor-to-ceiling mirror on the opposite wall. In the mirror, a poorly dressed white-clad girl was hiding in the corner, crying and trembling. Then a man in black gently took the girl's hand from behind and walked toward the light. I watched this scene in the mirror and smiled, then asked Sam behind me in a calm voice, "Will my father teach me how to make them suffer 100 times more than me?" Upon hearing my words, Sam's eyes behind the lenses flashed with approval. He replied respectfully, "Sir said that he is only responsible for handing over the knife. How to use the knife is your own matter." I get it now. The second day's dinner, at the long dining table, only Mr. Frank and I were present. He leisurely cut the steak on his plate, the knife and fork clinking together, producing a crisp sound. Without lifting his head, he asked as if casually, "Have you decided?" I put down the knife and fork in my hands, sat up straight, and looked directly at Mr. Frank across from me. "I've made up my mind. I want them to go from hope to despair, and finally lose everything in regret." Mr. Frank's action of cutting the steak paused for a moment. He raised his head, a smile of appreciation curling at the corners of his mouth. "Excellent." He put a small piece of cut beef into his mouth, chewing elegantly. "Sam will cooperate with you." I had Sam investigate everything about Jessica. She was at the best private university in the area, and had become a campus celebrity with the image of a strong student who persevered through family tragedy, earning the sympathy and affection of both teachers and classmates. What she cared about most was naturally her carefully cultivated, perfect victim image. A week later, I appeared at the gate of this university. Mr. Frank's subordinates only needed one phone call to arrange all my enrollment procedures. The high-end custom outfit made me look like a delicate porcelain doll. No one dared to approach. The black Bentley stopped in front of the teaching building, and as the driver opened the car door for me, I immediately saw Jessica surrounded by a crowd of people. She was wearing a faded white dress, with a gentle yet strong smile on her face, accepting the concern and praise from her classmates. "Jessica, you've been through so much, and you still managed to come out on top after everything that happened at home. Yeah, it's all because of your sister. If she hadn't led those robbers back to your house, your family wouldn't have suffered such a tragedy. She deserved to die." I walked through the crowd step by step, the crisp sound of my heels causing the surrounding whispers to gradually fade away. All eyes were on me, curious, probing, and amazed. I stopped in front of Jessica. The smile on her face froze and shattered the moment I appeared. Her pupils suddenly contracted, and she seemed nailed to the spot, her lips trembling uncontrollably. She reached out a shaking hand, pointing at me. "Ghost." I smiled, leaning in slightly to her ear. In a voice only we two could hear, I whispered softly, "Little sister, long time no see." She suddenly stepped back, knocking over the classmate behind her without even noticing. I straightened up, admiring her pale little face and the fear she couldn't hide in her eyes, then spoke again. Mom and Dad, they must miss me a lot, right? Every word I uttered, I enunciated very softly, yet to her, it was as if a demon was whispering. The redness in her eyes instantly faded, leaving only panic behind. She collapsed onto the ground. The surrounding classmates were puzzled. Some helped Jessica up, asking in confusion, "Do you know her, Jessica?" Jessica bit her lower lip tightly, unable to utter a single word. The smile on my face deepened. I reached out my hand, wanting to affectionately wipe away the cold sweat from her temple, but she flinched away from my touch as if burned, violently swatting away my hand. "Don't touch me," she screamed, her voice shrill and piercing, completely disregarding her usual image of gentle fragility. Everyone was stunned by her intense reaction. I innocently withdrew my hand. "Does this student not like me?" The surrounding classmates also chimed in. "Yes, Jessica. Why are you treating the new student this way?" Quickly apologized to classmate Fu Wan, under the watchful eyes of everyone present. Jessica, for the sake of her perfect image, naturally didn't want to expose my identity, so she could only grit her teeth and swallow her anger. She stood up, extended her hand, and said insincerely, "I'm sorry." I took a step forward, shook her hand, and with just a slight increase in finger pressure, she was already unable to bear it. I said in a voice that only the two of us could hear, "What's wrong? Aren't you happy to see your sister come back? Or perhaps, you're afraid I'll come back and take away everything that rightfully belongs to me?" She staggered backward 2 steps, her face pale. At school, I didn't actively approach Jessica, yet I was everywhere. I just needed to sit there. My mere presence was the greatest torment to her. The money Mr. Frank gave me flowed out like water. I treated the whole class to the most expensive afternoon tea, donated the latest equipment to the school's basketball team, and even sponsored a grand fireworks show in my name during the school anniversary. Everyone started revolving around me. Those faces that once showed concern for Jessica were now piled with flattery towards me. Jessica, who used to be the center of attention, tasted the feeling of being neglected for the first time. She began to feel jealous, unable to hide the resentment in her eyes, and started trying to regain her pitiful sense of superiority through me. Jessica started telling stories again, spreading rumors among her classmates. She insinuated that I was involved with unsavory characters, that I was being kept by a wealthy older man, which was how I could live such a luxurious and extravagant life. Some people began to look at me with strange eyes, whispering among themselves. I didn't bother to explain, nor did I even spare them an extra glance. She once again recounted her family's tragic circumstances with tears streaming down her face, her words implying that her missing sister had been indiscreet, thus bringing trouble upon her family. I was just waiting for her to roll this snowball of lies even larger, large enough to completely bury herself. The opportunity came quickly. The school held a public speaking competition themed, "Gratitude and Family." Jessica, as a student representative with excellent grades and character, was the first to be selected to take the stage. Under the spotlight, she wore that faded white dress, her face bearing an expression that evoked pity, once again telling her fabricated story with great emotion and vividness. "How many years has it been, and she's still feeding on my blood-soaked steamed buns?" She thanked her adoptive parents for their kindness, tearfully expressed her longing for her deceased sister, and won the sympathy and applause of the entire audience. Just as she was holding back tears, basking in the spotlight, and reaching the climax of her speech, I sat in the back row of the auditorium, gently nodded to Sam beside me. Sam pressed his phone. The large screen behind the podium, which was supposed to display a slideshow of Jessica's personal photos, suddenly went black. The next second, piercing music and noisy curses rang out, and the screen showed surveillance footage of an underground casino's gaudy and lurid scene. The entire hall was in an uproar. In the center of the screen, my dear father David was pushing a stack of chips onto the gambling table with a flushed face. Then, the scene shifted to him kneeling on the ground, fawningly hugging Bob's leg, and tearfully begging for a loan. "Bob, lend me one last time. I'll use my daughter Karina to pay off the debt." The crying voice from the podium stopped abruptly, and the person froze in place. After the video played, it was immediately followed by clear photos of Mrs. James swiping her card at a luxury store, with the date being exactly the 3rd day after our home was robbed. Everyone was so clear that this was the 3rd day after the robbery. Thanks to Jessica's promotion over all these years, Jessica stood on the stage, her face drained of all color. Whispers and discussions erupted from the audience below. Weren't you saying you got robbed? How do you still have money to go to the casino? Didn't your mom say you couldn't even make ends meet? Jessica's perfect persona shattered under the scrutiny of everyone's eyes. Mr. James was quickly fired by the company for seriously damaging the company's reputation, completely cutting off the James family's source of income. Mrs. James went to the school and caused a scene, cursing and rolling around, claiming that someone was framing them, which instead made Jessica unable to hold her head up even higher. Jessica blamed everything on me, cornering me after a PE class and snarling as she demanded, "Is it you who's right, you bitch?" I just looked at her calmly, watching her face twisted by jealousy and anger, and said peacefully, "Aren't these facts? She couldn't beat me, and she had a notorious reputation at school with no one to support her, leaving her nothing but helpless barking." I seized upon Jessica's eager desire to turn her life around. I orchestrated an accident where she accidentally found a wallet containing a large amount of cash and an invitation to a charity gala. Sure enough, greed got the better of her, and she didn't turn it in. Instead, she secretly bought an expensive dress and attended the gala as the supposed owner, hoping to land a real, golden turtle husband there. And the host of that dinner party was none other than me. This meticulously planned dinner was Jessica's guillotine, and also the closing gift I gave to the heartwarming drama of the James family. At the dinner party, when Jessica was wearing an expensive gown, thinking she was the center of attention, the real protagonist made her entrance. A dignified lady of noble bearing, accompanied by 2 security guards, walked straight toward her. Slap, a crisp slap echoed through the air. "How dare you impersonate me and then swagger in here so brazenly? What do you think you are?" The noblewoman's voice wasn't loud, but everyone present heard her clearly. Accused of theft and impersonation, publicly humiliated, she was completely disgraced. I sat in the shadows on the second floor, gently swirling the red wine in my glass as I quietly watched the farce unfolding downstairs. Sam stood behind me, his lenses reflecting the chaotic lights from below. "Miss, the matter at school has been taken care of." I nodded and downed the wine in my glass in one gulp. "It's time to go home." This home, of course, was not the home at Frank's mansion. The notice expelling Jessica from school for misconduct arrived at the James household ahead of her. The James household was thrown into complete chaos. The unemployed father drowned himself in alcohol all day long, with the family's only source of income cut off. He vented all his grievances on the mother and Jessica, arguing, throwing things, and then the dull thud of fists hitting flesh. I had Sam rent an apartment across from their house. Every day, I received the latest family videos from them. The mother, looking at her adopted daughter, who she once took pride in but who had now become the protagonist of a scandal, no longer showed her former affection. "You jinx. We shouldn't have brought you back from the orphanage in the first place. Our family has been ruined because of you." Verbal abuse hurts more than any physical beating. They finally saw me on the live broadcast of the ribbon-cutting ceremony for Mr. Frank's company's listing. In the video, I was standing beside Mr. Frank, wearing a well-tailored suit, calmly facing countless cameras and media. Mr. Frank personally adjusted my tie and announced to the cameras, "This is my daughter, Fu Wan, and she will be my successor in the future." The overwhelming publicity made the name Fu Wan spread throughout the entire city overnight. In the cramped and dilapidated house of the James family, there was a deathly silence. The light from the television screen reflected off their 3 ashen faces. Mr. James suddenly turned his head, his bloodshot eyes staring intently at Jessica. "You knew she was back all along." Jessica was so frightened that she trembled all over, her lips quivering as she couldn't utter a word. "You bitch, Mrs. James lunged forward like a madwoman, grabbing Jessica's hair and slapping her face from side to side. "You knew all along she wasn't dead, and you watched our family fall apart step by step. You were just afraid she'd come back and take everything from you," beating and kicking, more viciously than ever before, because they finally understood that what they had missed was an opportunity that could have elevated them to success in one step. After going through great lengths, they finally found out the location of Frank's mansion. The 3 members of the James family knelt miserably outside the villa gate, letting the rain soak them like 3 drowned dogs. "Karina, Mom and Dad were wrong. Karina, open the door. Let us see you. Sister, I was wrong. Please forgive me." They cried and shouted at the top of their lungs, each voice more miserable than the last. I stood by the huge floor-to-ceiling window on the second floor, holding a cup of hot milk, preparing to deliver it to Mr. Frank, calmly watching them outside the window, just like back then, when they were in the wardrobe, coldly watching me through that gap. Mr. Frank had somehow walked up beside me, draping a coat over my shoulders and reaching out to take the milk. The voice was low. They really don't know how good they have it, missing out on such a wonderful daughter. He reached out and ruffled my hair. But they are still your biological parents. There was a rare hint of unease in Mr. Frank's tone. He was afraid that I would leave Frank's mansion and return to the James family, who treated me like dirt. I turned my head and looked up at him with a smile. Raindrops tapped against the glass. Outside the window was a howling wilderness. Inside the window was warmth and tranquility. I tiptoed and gently kissed his cheek, shaking my head. I already have a new daddy. I don't want them anymore. I had the servants let them in, on the floor. Their 3 faces were reflected, dirty and disheveled, with rainwater and mud dripping from their clothes. In the living room, the 3 of them knelt stiffly before me. Mother hugged my calf tightly, crying with snot and tears streaming down her face. Karina, Mommy was wrong. Will you forgive Mommy? We are the ones who are family. The father raised his hand and slapped himself hard on the cheek. Once, twice, the sound echoing loudly. It's all because I was bewitched, blinded by greed. Karina, save your father, save our family. Jessica knelt at the back, her whole body trembling with fear. I looked down at them, as if watching a drama where, at the end of the story, the villains receive their due punishment, but I felt no anger, no satisfaction. Mr. Frank slowly walked down from the second floor, came to stand behind me, and the press made their bodies shake even more violently. He asked me in a soft voice, as if coaxing a sleepy child, Karina, they're letting you go home. Are you leaving? I looked at the 3 ridiculous faces before me and slowly shook my head. I crouched down, bringing my gaze level with my mother, who was kneeling on the ground. I mimicked her frantic tone from back then in the wardrobe, asking clearly, word by word, why are you crying? When you pushed me out back then, why didn't you cry? Her sobbing stopped abruptly, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. I turned to the father beside him who was still vigorously slapping his own face. Dad, weren't you the one who said those uncles were our friends and told me to go play with them for a while? His raised hand froze mid-air, all the blood draining from his face. I let out a soft laugh, my voice ice cold. My current friends are way more impressive than them. Finally, my gaze fell upon Jessica. She trembled all over and buried her head even lower. Little sister, aren't you the best at playing the pitiful role? Go on. Why did you stop performing? I stood up, no longer looking at them, and turned to affectionately link my arm with Mr. Frank's, leaning against him, feeling the stable aura emanating from his body. I spoke to the 3 kneeling people with the sweetest, yet cruelest voice. I already have a new daddy now. I don't want you anymore. In their shocked, remorseful, and finally completely desperate gazes, I smiled and added the final sentence. Oh, by the way, Bob, seems like it's time for him to come out and collect the debt too. Upon hearing the name, Bob, Mr. James completely broke down. He was as if all his bones had been pulled out, collapsing entirely to the ground. Bob was betrayed by a mole back when he was involved in organ trafficking. After years of hiding and evading capture, he had always wanted to find the person who leaked the information. I merely passed along a small piece of information, and Bob immediately concluded that it was Mr. James who had leaked the secret. In their line of work, the only way to deal with traitors was an endless cycle of retaliation and vendettas. A few days later, in a corner of the social news section, an inconspicuous piece of news was published. A man surnamed James was arrested on suspicion of massive gambling and commercial fraud. With solid evidence against him, however, during his transfer by police, the prisoner transport vehicle encountered an accidental car crash. He didn't die, but his legs were crippled, and he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, consumed by endless regret and fear. His wife, my dear mother, went completely insane upon learning that her husband was disabled and their family fortune was gone. She spent her days clutching a pillow, telling everyone she met that it was her lost daughter, alternately weeping and cursing, then laughing shrilly, until she was eventually sent to a mental institution. As for Jessica, my dear sister, after being expelled from school, no decent place would take her in due to scandals involving theft and identity fraud. She eventually found work washing dishes at a greasy little restaurant, where she had to endure her boss's harassment every day. Sam was reporting all this to me while I was in the garden watering a newly bloomed black rose. Dewdrops rolled down the petals, like drops of black tears. Mr. Frank had somehow walked up behind me, his footsteps light, as if preparing to sneak away. I called out to him at the right moment, "Dad, going fishing again." He chuckled twice. "You've grown up, it's time for me to retire." I watched his leisurely departing figure, turning around. I looked at the garden full of blooming roses. The roses blazed brilliantly, as if welcoming the new master of this estate. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. After 5 years in the industry, I'm still unknown, so I have no choice but to return home and enter into an arranged marriage with a man I've never met. My fiancé despises me and didn't attend our wedding. He called me to set down 3 rules. Hello, I have someone I like, so you don't need to waste your time on me. You can also go find whoever you like, I won't interfere. This marriage is just a transaction, we'll divorce in a year. Prepare yourself mentally, and don't cry and make a scene refusing to sign the papers when the time comes. He hung up the phone directly after announcing this. I stood at the study door, lost in thought. His study was filled with my merchandise. I had changed my name and boldly entered the entertainment industry 5 years ago, despite various resources being poured into me. I remained lukewarm and never quite caught fire, so I had no choice but to bow my head to my parents and fulfill the arranged marriage agreement to return home. My betrothed was Chandler Collins, the eldest son of the Collins family, cold, taciturn, and ruthless in his methods. According to my friends, Chandler Collins possessed a face of extraordinary allure, a veritable incubus of the modern era. It's easy to let one's guard down and think he is a refined and approachable person, but in reality, he is cold-blooded, harsh, and devoid of human warmth, seeing only profit in everything. My friend's tone gradually turned sympathetic as she said this. "Lisa, everyone feels sorry for you. To marry such a cold and heartless guy, who knows what kind of hardships await in the future." I clenched my phone tightly. After a long silence, she could only let out a bitter laugh helplessly. She hung up the phone call from her friend. I logged into the back end of the social media app. I posted the resignation statement I had prepared for a long time in the drafts box. Although I was just a minor celebrity, I still had a few die-hard fans. As soon as the resignation statement was posted, those familiar IDs flooded into my private mailbox. Among the countless messages, the person with the nickname Q stood out particularly. This person was someone I was all too familiar with. Over the past 5 years, whenever I posted updates, he was always the first to like and comment, making him my ultimate super fan. Moreover, since he used top-notch equipment, every photo he shared was always high definition and stunning. He also spent a lot of money to support me, which led other fans to affectionately call him Brother QQ. Going to his profile page, the pinned content was my video editing collection, along with the gesture dances he learned from me. Although he never showed his face, every movement was so earnest that it seemed almost clumsy. However, what made me remember him most was his comments every time. No fancy compliments, no exaggerated confessions, just one simple phrase that was almost stubbornly persistent: "I hope you can be happy every day." But today, he broke the routine. The dense text in the chat box wrote about how he accidentally came across my video on his darkest days. Write how a careless word of mine helped him get through a sleepless night. Write how his hands would tremble with excitement every time he saw my updates. Finally, he almost used up all his strength to say, with restraint and sincerity, "I'm sorry, I might have been a bit presumptuous, but I still want to tell you that you are a ray of light for me, a lifeline, the source of my motivation to live. Over the past 5 years since I met you, I have been very happy every day. Ivy, you are someone I cherish as much as my own life." I stared at the screen and spotted several typos in a row. He must have been in a hurry while typing, and his fingers were also trembling slightly. In the end, he was even so overwhelmed that he couldn't steady the keyboard. After reading his heartfelt little essay, my eyes couldn't help but redden. In the end, I also replied to him very seriously. "Thank you for your support and love over these 5 years. I hope you're happy every day. May we meet again if fate allows." Replied to all private messages one by one. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to suppress the reluctance in my heart, and prepared to delete my account. But suddenly, I saw my fiancé's name appear at the top of the trending topics. Hashtag Chandler Collins crying in car hashtag. I curiously clicked into this entry, and a 10-second video automatically played. The dim streetlight illuminated Chandler Collins's distinctly outlined profile. His long lashes drooped low, his shoulders trembled slightly, and clear tear stains were visible on his face, giving him an overall aura of brokenness bordering on despair. The comments section exploded. "Oh my God, it's actually the great demon Chandler crying. The sun didn't rise from the west today after all. LOL. With that commotion I thought there was a ghost in Mr. Chandler's car. Scary scary, whatever you are, quickly get off our Mr. Chandler. So what exactly is this thing that can make this cold-blooded great demon shed tears?" As soon as these words were spoken, those people quickly began speculating about the reason for Chandler Collins's tears. Some said he was crying because the forced marriage was too painful, others said he was overwhelmed by his busy work schedule, but regardless of the reason, I had no interest in it. I casually glanced at the situation twice, then went to hand over the post-retirement matters with my agent. 2 a.m. I dragged my exhausted body back home. As soon as I opened my phone, I noticed that the man who had been trending on the hot search list this morning had sent me a friend request. The verification message contained only 2 simple words: Chandler Collins. I hesitated for 2 seconds before clicking on his profile. Chandler Collins's profile picture is entirely black, with a white space for the signature, and his username is simply a single Z, every detail exuding an aura that warns strangers to keep their distance. I rubbed my aching temples and reluctantly clicked agree. Chandler Collins quickly sent a voice message, his tone cold and distant. It was as if he were dealing with an unavoidable nuisance, maintaining only the bare minimum of politeness and courtesy. "Miss Lisa, hello, I am your betrothed, Chandler Collins." I'm not used to voice chatting with people, so I chose to type, "Hello." Chandler Collins wasn't in the mood for small talk with me, so he got straight to the point. "I already have someone I like, and I will only love her for the rest of my life, so you don't need to waste your time on me after we're married. Our marriage is just a transaction. I don't mind an open marriage. You can go find whoever you like, and I won't interfere. Likewise, you can't interfere in my affairs either, Miss Lisa. I heard from your father that you have a first love who's currently abroad. I happen to travel overseas frequently for business. I don't mind taking you along and creating an opportunity for you two to meet." I was stunned, and asked in disbelief, "You mean, you can cover for me, so I can go see my first love, Chandler Collins?" "Yes, that's exactly what I mean. After all, I don't want you to be obsessed with me, so it's better if you have someone you like. That way, I'll feel more at ease." I was momentarily at a loss for words. "Go on, what else is there, Chandler Collins? Also, I hope you always keep in mind that our marriage will only last 1 year. After 1 year, we'll go get divorced. Don't you dare cry and throw a tantrum refusing to sign the papers at that time. It would be embarrassing for both our families." I said, "All right, you can rest assured on that, I won't." Chandler Collins let out a huge sigh of relief upon hearing my assurance. "By the way, Miss Lisa, I think we don't need to hold a wedding ceremony, and certainly don't need to fulfill the marital duties in bed. We also don't need to make our marriage public. I don't want too many people to know about it, which is better for both of us." I have no objections and agreed. After Chandler Collins finished listing all these requirements, he fell silent for a long time, probably worried that he had missed something. After a full 15 minutes, he finally completed his review and sent one last message. "That's all for now. I'm sorry, Miss Lisa. As a businessman, I don't believe in verbal agreements, so, to prevent you from changing your mind someday in the future, I'd like to draft a contract for us to sign. Would that be okay?" The contract content includes not only property division issues, but also what we just discussed. For example, the marriage will only last 1 year. We don't need to fulfill marital obligations. And I will cover for you when you meet your first love, etc. Miss Lisa, what do you think? I naturally had no objections. "All right, Mr. Collins, please draft the contract and send it to me." Chandler Collins was satisfied. "I'll have the contract drafted and sent to you first thing tomorrow morning." I thought for a moment and asked, "By the way, Mr. Collins, should we meet before we get married?" Chandler Collins refused very decisively. "No need for that, it's a waste of time. And there's nothing much for us to see each other about. We'll see each other when we get married in 3 days." That suited me perfectly, and I nodded repeatedly. Okay, Chandler Collins was very worried that I might change my mind, so the efficiency of drafting the contract was extremely high. He sent me the electronic version of the contract by 4 o'clock, however. What surprised me even more was that he actually delivered the dozen-page paper contract to my house personally at around 6 o'clock the next morning. While my dad and he were exchanging pleasantries in the living room, my mom dragged me out of bed and shoved me into the bathroom to get ready. I was hiding around the corner on the second floor, toothbrush in mouth, observing Chandler Collins, who was sitting in the living room, just as my friend had described to me over the phone. Chandler Collins sat upright on the genuine leather sofa, his long legs crossed, the well-tailored pure black suit outlining his superior figure to perfection. Though it was merely the most ordinary of postures, his exceptionally outstanding bone structure and appearance somehow emanated an inexplicable sensual allure of abstinence. No wonder my dad said that Chandler Collins was his carefully selected, top-notch choice. The most suitable marriage partner for me, however. I immediately spotted the pink wristband hidden beneath his sleeve. Pink is my support color, so I can always spot pink at a glance among a pile of random colors, but Chandler Collins, with such a top-tier master's face, actually likes to wear pink leather cuffs. It's quite interesting. When my dad was chatting with Chandler Collins, he kept giving me meaningful glances from time to time. But Chandler Collins was like a Zen master in deep meditation, not even batting an eyelash. Just looking at my dad's performance with a faint expression, he was using his actions to prove to me he had absolutely no interest in me, his fiancée who had appeared out of nowhere and whom he had never met before. My dad gritted his teeth and decided to come clean. Chandler, stay for breakfast before you go. Lisa's home too, so you two can meet and get acquainted. No need. Chandler Collins' voice was deep and magnetic, carrying distance and indifference. Uncle Lincoln. There's no need to meet, after all. We'll have plenty of forced time together in the future. It'll be hard not to see each other, won't it? My dad wanted to say something else, but was coldly interrupted by Chandler Collins. All right, Uncle Lincoln, I'll take my leave first. Having said that, he turned around and walked away directly. The moment I had completely gathered myself and stepped into the living room, Chandler Collins just stepped out of the living room and casually closed the door behind him. Not once did he look up in my direction throughout the entire time. He might as well have carved the words, "not interested," into the back of his head. Chandler Collins had just left my house. I immediately received a message from him. Miss Lisa, I have already sealed the contract and handed it over to your father. You can sign it after reading it, and I will have my secretary come to collect it after you sign. I carefully flipped through the contract. Besides what we negotiated last night, the document clearly states one line at the end: all the benefits brought by our marriage will be split between us at a ratio of 4 to 6, with him getting 4/10 and me 6/10. Moreover, after our marriage ends, I will receive a large sum of money. All of this adds up to quite a substantial amount, enough to ensure I live worry-free for the rest of my life. I counted the zeros at the end. I carefully read through the contract again. My resistance to the arranged marriage at heart had now transformed into anxiety over holding such a huge fortune. I asked nervously, "By the way, Mr. Collins, there doesn't seem to be any clause in the contract about you and the person you like. Have you forgotten?" I was genuinely asking this question, but Chandler Collins's response to me was filled with resistance and impatience. "Miss Lisa, there's no need to test me. I know that women are at a disadvantage in marriage, so during our marriage, I won't do anything that would make outsiders laugh at you." I paused for a moment. Although we were separated by a screen, I seemed to see Chandler Collins frowning at his phone at that moment. The sharp-tongued man muttered, "Damn woman, how dare she interfere in my affairs," while adjusting his tone to reply to me. Moreover, I couldn't possibly let her be a third party, not even in name only, at this point. Chandler Collins paused. It should be because he mentioned the person he likes. Even his tone unconsciously became much gentler. "I will wait until my marriage with you is completely over before I seriously pursue her, confess to her, and be with her. Of course, all of this will only happen if she doesn't despise me and doesn't have someone she likes. Can't tell. This CEO is quite devoted." Chandler Collins fell silent for a moment after speaking, then said, "By the way, send me your ID number." I became instantly wary. "What are you planning to do, Chandler Collins? The day after we get married, I have to go abroad for work. The place I'm going happens to be the city where your first love is. Don't you want to see him? I'll buy your plane ticket too. I'll cover for you as stated in the contract, and tell your family we're going on our honeymoon." I hesitated somewhat. My finger hovered over the screen, not pressing down. Chandler Collins waited in vain for my reply. So he patiently coaxed and persuasively guided me. "Miss Lisa, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Next time won't be so fortunate. You must think carefully. If you miss this chance, who knows when we'll meet again." I still hesitated. After all, after we broke up back then, I blocked all of that man's contact information directly. "Chandler Collins, my dad told me that the two of you didn't break up on good terms. I have a friend who is an emotional expert, and he's best at helping couples who have broken up. I'll bring him along, and he'll definitely be able to help you two reconcile." I gradually became somewhat tempted by his persuasion. "It's like going on a trip." Finally sent the ID number to him. "Well, okay, thank you for your trouble." "You're welcome." Chandler Collins's mood instantly became very pleasant. His attitude toward me has also improved somewhat from before. Yes, as he said, he was genuinely afraid of being with me, originally. It was agreed that Chandler Collins' secretary would come to pick up the contract, but he suddenly sent a message in the evening. "Miss Lisa, I just got called into an unexpected meeting, so my secretary can't get away. I'll have to trouble you to make a delivery. By the way, I hope you can come personally. I don't trust anyone else to run errands, and it would be best if you could bring it today. After all, the sooner we sign our contract, the sooner we can both rest easy." It's true that the sooner we sign, the sooner we can rest easy. He's afraid I'll change my mind. I'm afraid he might secretly change the numbers above. I glanced at the pouring rain outside. I steeled myself. I gritted my teeth and got up from the bed. Fortunately, Chandler Collins lives very close to my house. It took about 10 minutes of walking to get there. I stood at the entrance of Chandler Collins' house. I couldn't help but feel that the arrangement at his doorstep was very familiar. As if I had seen it somewhere before, I entered the password he gave me and successfully opened the door. The room layouts in this area of the house were all pretty similar, so I didn't have much trouble finding Chandler Collins's study, but soon, I fell into deep thought as I looked at the rose-pink door before me that was completely out of place with the entire house. The overall style of the Chandler Collins residence leaned toward a cold, minimalist aesthetic, cold white wallpaper, black furniture, and even the curtains were black, only this door was pink, and it was that particularly eye-catching shade of pink. I hesitated for a moment before gently pushing open the study door. The next second, a huge single-person poster immediately came into view. I suddenly held my breath. I could hardly believe my eyes. The person on the poster was none other than me, taken during my second year in the industry. If I hadn't suddenly seen it here, I would have almost forgotten that this photo even existed. However, there was far more than just this poster in the study. Small cards, keychains, magazines, and various products I had endorsed, even the merchandise given away with the milk tea I promoted. Each little item was labeled with a date. Over a dozen boxes of merchandise were arranged neatly by their owner. It's being treasured like a precious baby. I rubbed my eyes hard. I was very certain that I hadn't experienced any hallucination. Moreover, the angle at which his desk was placed and the arrangement on the table looked very familiar. I carefully recalled the details and took out my phone to compare. Eventually, I reached an astonishing conclusion. Chandler Collins, this cold and distant CEO who was unapproachable and had signed countless contracts with me, was actually my hardcore fan. In private, I was still reeling from this realization. Chandler Collins sent me another message. "Miss Lisa, I forgot to mention that the study where I asked you to put the contract is the one on the second floor, not the one on the first floor." I touched my nose, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Sorry, I've already put the contract in the first floor study." Chandler Collins was getting a bit anxious. "Please put down the things and leave quickly, and don't touch anything inside carelessly. Those things are very important to me, and if you damage them, don't blame me for being rude to you." Don't worry." I put the things down and came out. Nothing was damaged. Paused for 2 seconds. I looked up and glanced at those collectibles again. Some of them were so rare that even I myself could no longer find them anywhere, yet Chandler Collins had managed to preserve each and every one of them meticulously, keeping them in such pristine condition that they looked almost brand new. As I watched, a bold guess suddenly popped into my mind. "Mr. Collins, the girl you told me you liked, could it be this celebrity?" Chandler Collins was silent for a long time before replying seriously. "Yeah." I was speechless with Chandler Collins. "What, do you know her? Or do you like her too? Could we be fellow fans?" I said, Haha, Chandler Collins. I gave a bitter laugh. I probably don't know her. Chandler Collins fell into thought, his tone even sounding a bit disappointed. Well, it's normal not to recognize her. She never became a big star. Originally, after I took over the company completely this year, I could have secretly provided her with resources 10,000 times better than before. But she retired from the entertainment industry. What will she do after retiring? Will she get married within this year? I wonder which lucky bastard has such good fortune to get her. That despicable man had better cherish her well, otherwise I will hunt him down to the ends of the earth, castrate him physically first, then dismember him into 10,000 pieces. I won't let him off no matter what. I was speechless. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and tentatively asked another question. By the way, Mr. Collins, do you really think we don't need to meet in person before getting our marriage certificate? Chandler Collins, yes, I've already said it. I'm very certain that we don't need to meet, I said. Fine, I hope you won't regret it later. Chandler Collins's tone suddenly turned cold. Lisa, what do you mean? Are you having second thoughts? Do you want to break our agreement? Don't forget, we've already signed the contract, so don't even think about regretting it. I was speechless and chuckled dryly before replying, don't worry, I have no intention of regretting it. Chandler Collins still seemed uneasy. Miss Lisa, I remember that our contract states there's a price to pay for breach of contract. I laughed. I know, don't worry, whoever regrets it will be the grandson. Chandler Collins thought for 2 seconds, like an honest man who had thrown caution to the wind, and replied to me with equal solemnity, then it's settled, whoever regrets it will regret it and be the grandson. I said, Mr. Collins, I'm sure many people have complimented your intelligence, right? Chandler Collins, of course. I also often feel proud of my above-average intelligence that surpasses ordinary people. I was speechless. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these few days, I hadn't been in contact with Chandler Collins. On the day of registering our marriage, I arrived at the Civil Affairs office half an hour earlier than Chandler Collins. When Chandler Collins's Maybach came into my sight, I was still leaning against the wall dozing off. The moment Chandler Collins recognized my face, he suddenly gripped the steering wheel tightly, as if he had been frozen in place. I didn't hesitate and walked straight toward him. At the same time, the phone in my bag kept vibrating non-stop. It was Chandler Collins messaging me. He had completely forgotten about his harsh and cold attitude from the other day. His tone was excited and thrilled. Miss Lisa, can we go get the marriage certificate a bit later? I saw her today. She's walking towards me. I want to say something to her. Just one sentence, please. Oh no, my heart is beating a bit fast now. I won't die suddenly. Today I might. I stopped in front of his car and gently tapped on the window with my fingertips. Chandler Collins slowly lowered the car window. Complex emotions surged in his eyes, even carrying a devout worship, as if he had finally waited for some long-desired moment. His fingertips trembled wildly. I met his gaze, gently curved my lips, and reached out to him. Hello, I am Lisa. Paused for a moment. In his suddenly stiffened expression, I lightly added another sentence. Of course, you can also call me by my stage name, Ivy. The air froze. The smile on Chandler Collins's face slowly cracked apart. Chandler Collins stood there frozen for a long time without moving, but his phone, which was on speaker, kept ringing continuously. His brother had been shouting questions at the top of his lungs. Chandler Collins, are you still there? You haven't answered me yet. Did you see Lisa or not? The Lincolns have always claimed their daughter is sick, so they never bring Lisa out, which means hardly anyone has seen what she looks like. I'm really curious. Chandler Collins, say something already. Did you see Lisa or not? Chandler Collins finally came to his senses, stiffly lowering his head and squeezing out a word from between his teeth. No, his brother was shocked. You didn't see Lisa. Then who did you see? Chandler Collins remained silent for a long time. Finally slowly closing his eyes, I saw my grandma, his brother, in the private room of the hot pot restaurant. The hot pot was bubbling and steaming. I sat across from Chandler Collins. The time for getting the marriage certificate was still postponed, because right after he hung up the phone, he closed his eyes and slapped himself hard twice. He slapped his face so hard it became swollen, making it impossible to appear on camera. And at this moment, his earlobes were red as if dripping with blood. I don't know if it was from being slapped just now or because of something else. He's been following me around in a daze since earlier, and from the time we sat down until now, he hasn't said a single word. staring at the plate on the table with a mixture of regret and anger. It's as if he wants to stare 2 holes into it. I waved my hand in front of his face. Chandler Collins. Chandler Collins snapped back to reality. His gaze lingered on my face for a second before quickly looking away. Then he picked up the bottle on the table and started drinking frantically, asked vaguely, "What's wrong?" I paused for a moment. "That's sesame oil." Chandler Collins hesitated, then his face turned green. Pft, pft, pft. Cough, cough, cough. Ugh, ugh, ugh. I waited for him to finish dealing with it before speaking again. "It's nothing much. I just wanted to ask, do we still need to buy rings?" Chandler Collins froze for a second, his voice firm yet carrying a hint of anticipation. Well, of course we do." I waved my hand to interrupt him, then went to rummage through my bag. "Okay, wait a moment, let me find it. Ah, here it is." Chandler Collins' eyes instantly lit up upon hearing this, and his hand, which had been resting below, nervously clutched at his hem, and then, under his gaze full of anticipation, I took out the contract, flipped through it forcefully, and pointed to one of the pages. "Oh wait, I almost forgot. You've written it down clearly here. The two of us don't need to wear wedding rings." Chandler Collins suddenly couldn't smile anymore. "No, I still need to check if there are any requirements for meals." Chandler Collins. "Don't eat yet." I lowered my head to search through the contract. Chandler Collins pursed his lips tightly, his resentful gaze fell upon the contract in my hands. Why are you still carrying around this pile of scrap paper?" I glared at him. "What do you mean it's scrap paper? You told me the day before yesterday to keep it safe and put it in a password box. By the way, did you buy the password box?" Chandler Collins was speechless. Chandler Collins forced a smile. "Not yet," I nod. "Then remember to buy it." Chandler Collins. "Okay." I put the contract away and tilt my head to ask him, "Oh, by the way, aren't you going on a business trip tomorrow?" Chandler Collins froze, gritting his teeth hard. "Yes." "Are you going to take me with you too?" Chandler Collins continued gritting his teeth. "Yes." "Are you also going to take me to meet my first love?" Chandler Collins continued to grit his teeth but refused to make a sound. "Were you planning to cover for me again?" Chandler Collins practically ground his teeth to dust, gnashing them for a long time before finally whispering, "Lisa, actually I clicked my tongue and interrupted him. "I know what you're going to say. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I miss this chance, I don't know when the next one will come, right?" I know. You don't have to say it again." Chandler Collins. "No, I know. You're going to bring your friends along. Right, don't forget. My ability to reconcile with my ex depends entirely on you too. Good luck, Chandler." Chandler Collins. "Actually, okay. I know you'll cover for me. Thanks so much. What time is your flight tomorrow evening?" Chandler Collins choked up slightly, his voice trembling. "Lisa." I turned my head. Stop playing with me," Chandler Collins said, then lowered her long lashes, looking like she was about to cry. "I'm sorry. I'm just an idiot, a top-class idiot, a super idiot. The stupidest fool in the world. If I had just a bit more sense, I wouldn't have ended up like this. How could I be so stupid? When my mom gave birth to me, she didn't throw away the person and raise the placenta instead, did she? I'm not some placenta spirit, am I? Lisa, can you please ignore that idiot Chandler Collins from the other day? Actually, he's already dead. Yes, he's dead. He's really dead. I'm actually," Chandler Collins said. A look of almost desperate regret surfaced on his face, simply pushed the chair aside and knelt half on the ground in front of me, with deep remorse. He slapped himself several more times, his voice was muffled. I raised an eyebrow. Today's Chandler Collins wore a very formal black suit for the marriage registration. Jet black hair was neatly combed back, perfectly revealing the forehead. The whole person exuded a mature and scholarly charm. Yet he asked me in a puppy-like tone if I could stop playing with him. I looked away, took a sip of iced water, and a burning sensation in my chest made my throat feel dry. Cough. "All right." Chandler Collins looked up at me blankly, his lashes wet and sticking together, even a trace of blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. I tapped on the table, interrupting him. "All right, shut up, let's eat first." Chandler Collins immediately fell silent at my words. Sitting back down with a grievance, after a while, he blinked his red eyes and carefully asked, Then can we still get the marriage certificate?" I was confused. His head was full of thoughts that the big sum of money that was about to be his must not slip away. "Why not?" Chandler Collins nodded. rubbing his eyes hard, and his whole demeanor became less sorrowful because of that one sentence. Do I really still have this chance? Okay, but soon. He lowered his head again in disappointment, stammering as he spoke once more. Can you give me another chance to get to know you again? I mean, a chance for Chandler Collins and Lisa to get to know each other again. Starting from now on, can we do that, please? I'm begging you. Are all you men so troublesome? What's the difference? I frowned impatiently. Whatever, I don't care. Chandler Collins looked up in disbelief, his eyes sparkling as he stared at me. I reached out and took a bottle of drink. Chandler Collins quickly reached out to open it for me. I sniffled. Chandler Collins hurriedly pulled out 2 tissues and handed them to me. I picked up a pair of chopsticks and took a piece of steaming meat. Chandler Collins quickly leaned over to help me blow it out. After doing this, he lifted his eyelids and looked at me with eager eyes, like a dog trying to please its master. His tail wagged back and forth behind him. I suddenly couldn't eat anymore. Chandler Collins, stop this. The expression on Chandler Collins's face stiffened, and his Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty. What's wrong? Didn't you say we could get to know each other again? I wiped my mouth and spoke calmly. You don't need to waste your time on me. You can also like anyone you want. I won't interfere. Don't forget, this marriage is just a transaction. We're getting divorced in a year. So prepare yourself mentally. Better not cry and make a scene refusing to sign the papers then. You said all these things yourself. What? Have you forgotten? Chandler Collins felt as if the sky had fallen, his shoulders trembled, and he hung his head in despair. Oh, by the way, I seem to have forgotten to tell you that I never had any expectations for this marriage. It was all about the money, from beginning to end. Your current situation only causes me distress. I hope you remain clear-headed. Having said that, I stood up. All right, eat on your own, I'm leaving first. Chandler Collins finally came to his senses, let out a sob, and instinctively raised his hand. I quickly stuffed the contract into his palm, stopping his attempt to grab me. Chandler Collins gathered his wits, looked down at what was in his hand, and nearly fainted on the spot. I ignored his reaction and smiled slightly. Go home and read through what you wrote twice. Your memory doesn't seem very good. How could you forget what you wrote so quickly? I straightened up and took one last look at his fingers clenched white with tension, then turned and walked toward the door. The glass door reflected Chandler Collins's slightly trembling figure. He seemed like he was about to break. From that day on, Chandler Collins, who was usually aloof and proud, became annoyingly talkative. In the morning, he had to say good morning. I need to say good night in the evening, also made a pile of puppy emoticons. What meals to eat each day, how many meetings to attend, how many documents to sign, all of these things require calling me to report one by one. I'm reporting my itinerary. I hope to let you know everything I experienced in a day. Oh, by the way, Lisa, I accidentally canceled your flight ticket. You won't blame me, will you? Oh my God, this perfectly good flight ticket suddenly disappeared. Don't you think this means you and your first love don't have much fate? Look at this mess. I couldn't help but frown. Speaking coldly, can you accidentally delete an airline ticket? Are you always this unreliable? Chandler Collins was somewhat panicked, his voice beginning to tremble. Of course not. I was getting impatient. If you're such an unreliable person, I'll have to reconsider our marriage contract. Chandler Collins became even more flustered, his voice taking on a whiny tone as he pleaded humbly, Lisa, please don't reconsider. Okay, I was wrong. It wasn't an accident. I actually did it on purpose. I helplessly clicked my tongue and said, don't start crying at the drop of a hat. Men who cry too much will cry away all the good fortune from the household. Chandler Collins immediately stopped crying, silently comforted himself, then transferred a large sum of money to me, wagging his tail as he said, this is today's salary. Turning over my paycheck, after hanging up the phone, he silently comforted himself, then he transferred a large sum of money to me, wagging his tail as he said, this is today's salary. Turning over my paycheck, I was getting a bit annoyed by his continuous noise. Get lost. If you keep making noise, I'll block you. Chandler Collins paused for 2 seconds, with his tail between his legs. He quickly recalled all the messages he had just sent, from then on, apart from transferring the salary. He didn't utter another word, but then he started coming over to my house. As soon as Chandler Collins arrived, my dad exchanged the usual pleasantries with him and pointed upstairs. I'll go get Lisa down here. Chandler Collins politely curved his lips in a smile, about to nod. My dad immediately shook his head again. You see, I almost forgot. You said before that there's no need to meet, after all. It'll be hard to avoid seeing her in the future anyway. I remember, don't worry. I won't call her, definitely won't call her, haha, don't mind me, my memory is really getting worse. I can't even remember what time I take my medicine on a regular day. Chandler Collins fell silent for a long time, let out a couple of bitter laughs, and said earnestly, Uncle Lincoln, you might not believe this, but I was actually out of my mind that day. My dad, oh, by the way, I should probably call you Dad now. Dad, you don't need to be so polite with me. My dad was a bit stunned by Chandler Collins's suddenly fawning attitude. Chandler Collins didn't think anything was wrong at all. Dad, have you had breakfast? I'll go buy some for you. What do you like to eat? What does Mom like to eat? Oh, by the way, we haven't mopped the floor today, and the windows haven't been cleaned either. I see there are still some unwashed clothes in the laundry room, and the dog needs to be walked too. Dad, you rest. I'll go take care of all the chores now. Dad, don't worry, I've been capable since I was little. My dad was very nervous, running over anxiously to ask me, Daughter, has that kid Chandler Collins been cursed or something? He wasn't like this a couple of days ago. The next several days in a row, every day I woke up and went downstairs, I would see Chandler Collins dutifully appearing at my house, with a mop in his left hand and a cloth in his right, working diligently with a whooshing sound. He kneaded my dad's shoulders, massaged my mom's legs, and washed our dog's fur. On the table were still the things he bought for me that I loved to eat and a bouquet of bright red roses. He would take every word I said seriously to heart, even when I talked in my sleep during nap time saying I wanted pig ears, and we couldn't get takeout because of the rain. He foolishly ran out in the rain to buy them for me. I felt a bit guilty. Chandler Collins, seeing this, said half-jokingly, It's only right for a grandson to show respect to his grandmother. I was speechless. I sighed. Chandler Collins, you don't have to do this. Chandler Collins bit her lip, pretending not to hear, her voice stubborn. I don't understand what you're saying. I'll go tidy up your study for you. And then, he stayed alone in my study all night. When he left, he was also in a daze. He even accidentally fell down. I don't know what's wrong with him, until I received his message that evening. Lisa, can't you forget your first love? I remained non-committal and said objectively, regardless of who it is, the first person you fall in love with should be hard to forget, right? Chandler Collins suddenly stopped talking. I thought for a moment and asked again, do you mind that I had a first love? It's okay. If you mind, we don't have to get married. Chandler Collins still didn't say anything. The next day he still came. It's just that he suddenly took off the suit and shirt he usually wore. Put on a very childish hoodie. I thought this hoodie looked somewhat familiar, but I was quite puzzled. Chandler Collins, what's wrong with you today? Chandler Collins lowered his head, clenching his fists tightly, seemingly finding it hard to speak. Do you like me dressed like this? To be honest, I think Chandler Collins looks good in anything he wears. I smiled. It's quite beautiful. Chandler Collins' eyes lit up when I complimented him, but then, as if thinking of something else, they quickly dimmed again. His voice was low. As long as you like it, I'm willing. It was evening. While I was organizing my bookshelf, I accidentally dropped a photo. This photo was taken with my first love, and because it was in my book it wasn't thrown away by me. I bent down to pick it up, but suddenly noticed that my ex-boyfriend's hoodie looked very familiar, just like the one Chandler Collins had been wearing these past few days. So, was Chandler Collins's abnormal behavior today mimicking my ex-boyfriend? TCH, this idiot. I suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and quickly called Chandler Collins. My dad probably didn't explain clearly to you. My first love was cheating on me with 2 people, and that's why we broke up. Even if I go to see him, it's just to beat him up. I wanted to go on a business trip with you, but actually, I just wanted to go travel. I didn't really want to see him. Chandler Collins was quiet for a moment. His voice couldn't hide his excitement. Why are you suddenly saying these things? Actually, I wasn't that curious anyway. I was speechless. The next day, Chandler Collins went from making dinner for me with a long face to making dinner for me with a radiant expression. He even hummed a little tune softly. I was speechless, and so I spent a month getting along with Chandler Collins. On the first day, I thought Chandler Collins was being utterly baffling. On the 7th day, I thought Chandler Collins was a bit pitiful. On the 13th day, I thought he was actually quite cute sometimes. On the 23rd day, I absent-mindedly wiped the sweat from his forehead. On the 30th day, his profile while playing chess with my dad looked exceptionally handsome in the sunlight. When I came to my senses, I had already planted a light kiss on his cheek. Then he was stunned. The chess piece slipped from between his fingers and hit the board with a crisp sound. After realizing that I had just impulsively kissed him, I jumped up and ran back to my room, until my dad said he had left. I cautiously pushed open the door. The next second, someone grabbed my wrist and pulled me out. Chandler Collins's tall figure loomed over me, one arm wrapping around my waist, the other lifting my chin as he slowly leaned down. I held my breath, nervously clutching his clothes and gently closing my eyes. As a result, this guy suddenly turned his head and kissed me on the ear, then quickly pulled away. I opened my eyes in astonishment, and met Chandler Collins' smiling, gentle gaze. What were you expecting with your eyes closed just now? I realized I had been tricked by him and angrily punched him in frustration. Chandler Collins, you bastard, mm. Before I could finish speaking, Chandler Collins lowered his head again and captured my lips. Not content with just a brief taste, the warm tip of his tongue forcefully parted my teeth, entwining with an irresistible strength. I was kissed until my legs grew weak, with the cold wall behind me and his scorching chest before me. Each breath mingled our essences together. While shameful wet sounds emerged from our lips and teeth, the kiss ended. I didn't dare look into his eyes. Burying my face in his chest to calm my breathing, Chandler Collins nuzzled the top of my head like a puppy, his voice hoarse. By the way, I have to tell you some unfortunate news. My house was burglarized the other day. What? Burglarized? I looked up worriedly. Did they steal anything valuable? Chandler Collins shakes his head. None of them. I frown. Then what did he steal? Chandler Collins presses his lips together, his tone serious. He stole the contracts we both signed. All 18 of them. I'm stunned. Steal the contracts. What would he want with those? Chandler Collins shook his head seriously and pulled me back into his arms. Who knows? Maybe to take it back and sell it as scrap, I said. I caught sight of the corner of Chandler Collins's mouth twitching upward right after he finished saying this. I immediately understood what was going on. A scream echoed through the hallway instantly. Chandler Collins. You scoundrel! Chandler Collins lowered his head again, shamelessly covering my mouth. This person was all too familiar to me. In the blink of an eye, it was time for Chandler Collins and me to get our marriage certificate again. When Chandler Collins came to pick me up, I hadn't finished getting ready yet, so he stood at the door, shaking hands with the spider plant, fruit tree, and the little dog by the door. Brother number 1, wish me luck with getting my marriage certificate. Brother number 2, wish me a happy wedding. Brother number 3, wish me a blissful marriage. Thank you all. I'm not that nervous anymore. Ugh, nonsense. I'm so nervous I could die. I walked out the door while he was taking deep breaths repeatedly. Chandler Collins, let's go. We're going to get our marriage license. Chandler Collins froze, glanced at me once, then quickly covered his eyes with his hand. I thought his eyes were dazzled, so I went up and held his hand. But then a drop of cool liquid fell onto my hand. I was startled. Chandler Collins, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Chandler Collins reached out and embraced me, burying his face in my neck. It's like a dream. Actually, I've been to the airport many times before to see you, but I only dared to watch from afar each time, not daring to get any closer. I was even more afraid that if others found out it was me, they would recklessly speculate about our relationship. Or even use me to create rumors about you. I really couldn't tolerate that, but from today onwards, I don't have to be afraid anymore, because you are my wife now. From now on, I can protect you openly and proudly. Lisa, you can return to the entertainment industry and continue doing what you love. I will always support you. From now on, I am your husband, and more importantly, your most loyal fan. My eyes felt a bit sore, so I patted his back. All right, stop crying. You won't look good in photos if you keep this up. I'm a looks-oriented person, and I don't want ugly wedding photos. Chandler Collins stopped crying and smiled through his tears, then firmly took my hand. Let's go, we're going to the Civil Affairs office. That night, a certain hashtag prominently appeared at the top of the trending search list. Hashtag marriage between me and my favorite actor/actress. Haha, just kidding hashtag. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.